Professor Flowers, you indicated, you used the phrase, the noble cause, a number of times. In fact, in your podcast on Romans 9, you used it 24 times in just the first podcast. Could you show us the noble cause in Romans 9?
Yes. If you look at the two lumps of clay, he makes some for noble purposes and some for common. It's a noble purpose that he's made Israel for.
And what is the noble cause?
To bring the word to the world, to bring the Messiah and his message, to bring redemption.
Okay. And you said that the clay represents temporarily hardened Israel?
Yes, I believe he's not representing all of mankind whenever he's talking about the lump of clay. I think he is talking about specifically Israel at that time, because that's what the very original question is. That's what we're talking about from the very beginning. He starts off by introducing the question, which is, I would cut myself off. I would be accursed for these people. He's loving them and willing to be accursed for them because they are the people who have been entrusted with the promise. They've been entrusted with the prophets. They've been entrusted with the very words of God. And if the very people who are entrusted with the very words of God aren't believing it, they're standing in opposition to it, it would seem it's failed.
So if the clay is temporarily hardened Israel, then how does it then conclude in verses 22 through 24 by saying that part of that clay, which is formed for honorable use, is those who are called of the Jews and the Gentiles? How do you get the Gentiles?
The Gentiles are just being introduced in verse 24. And so he's saying, so also not only us who are being called, but the very purpose that he's doing all of this is to bring redemption to the entire world. So he's including now, from verse 24 down, he's showing that this is the purpose, is to bring redemption to all nations. It's almost like, I like to use the comparison of Jonah, because Jonah is called to go to Nineveh, and Jonah in a sense could represent Israel. And so if Jonah represents Israel and Jonah doesn't want to go, he's running from God, kind of like Israel.
So the vessels of mercy here mercy here is not soteriological. It is functional as to who gets to be used to be an instrument of bringing the message of Christ?
Well, like I said, I think it's both, because...
How could it be both?
Well, I can explain that. I think that, remember, there's two assumptions of the Israelite in that day. One, we've been entrusted with the words of God. We're the authorities. And then two, we're automatically children of God if we're children of Abraham. And so Paul is saying, no, neither one of those is true, because one, not all of you have been chosen to carry the word. Not all of you have been given the authority to carry God's word. And two, just because you are a child of Abraham doesn't make you a child of God. You're not saved because of your nationality. You're saved by grace through faith. And so he's undercutting both of those viewpoints.
You said in your presentation that, this was your words, that God has elected, or that he has chosen that people be saved by believing that word. Do you believe that God chooses who will believe, or is God's choice that is just that salvation will be by faith?
The second.
So God doesn't choose who will believe. The object of his choosing is the method, not the individual.
No, the individual is still chosen, because the individual who believes, just like the prodigal, when the prodigal son comes home, the father chooses to show him mercy. The father doesn't owe him that. That's a monergistic work of the father. The father could cast him out or punish him or stone him even in that day for what he did. It's a monergistic work of the father to decide to take that son back in. So it's a very personal relationship between those two people.
But the problem is that when we take the arguments to Romans chapter 9, you end up with an overthrow of the fundamental conclusion that is given to us. What did we see in Romans chapter 9 in verse 23? In order to make known the riches of his glory upon vessels of mercy, which he prepared beforehand for glory, even us whom he called. We were told that the clay is just Israel. It's just temporarily hardened Israel. I'm sorry, the vessels of mercy are all the elect of God, including you and I today. To come to that conclusion undercuts everything that the Apostle Paul has had to say, and the only reason you come to that conclusion is you bring other concepts to bear upon Romans 9 that Paul never brings up at all.